Hey guys, so we're in chapter 47 of the book of Isaiah. And before we start getting into these scriptures here, these verses, um, need to really pay attention to the language um, in Isaiah. The caption on chapter 47 is the humiliation of Babylon. Um, so basically, pronouncing judgment on Babylon. But why we need to pay attention to the language is because, like a lot of these scriptures, especially in Isaiah, we're not talking just about the local application of ancient Babylon that's already happened, because we have been over this over and over again. We know that Babylon hasn't been completely conquered yet. So we are talking about another Babylon that's in the book of Revelation as well. And this Babylon has not been conquered. So, and we'll be talking about Mystery Babylon in this one. So, all right. Verse 1. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground without a throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for you shall no more be called a tender and delicate. Take the millstones and grind meal. Remove your veil, take off your skirt, uncover the thigh, pass through the rivers. Your nakedness shall be uncovered. Yes, your shame will be seen, and I will take vengeance, and I will not arbitrate with a man. So, when you read this, you might think, well, that's some weird language. So basically, if you have read Revelation 17 and 18, you will understand the idioms used here. Because in Revelation 17 and 18, we're talking about the harlot, Mystery Babylon. So these idioms and this language used in here is describing a harlot. And so it makes a little more sense once you read verses 1 through 3 if you know that we're talking about the harlot. Okay, the verbiage is represents that. Okay, so in verse 3 at the end, he says, "And I will not arbitrate with a man," and that's also in other, I think in King James Version, translated, "And I will not meet thee as a man." So um, that is God saying here, um, you're not coming up against a normal man, you're coming up against God, and I've got judgment waiting for you. That's what he's saying, which is a scary, scary thought to me. Um, but these people do, they come up against him. So, and he's got judgment waiting for them, the God of all creation. And he's not going to come at them like a mere man. He's going to come at them like God. So, okay, verse 4. Um, as for our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Israel. And we know that Isaiah likes to call our Redeemer, Jesus Christ, the Holy One of Israel. All right, verse 5. Sit in silence and go into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for you shall no longer be called the Lady of Kingdoms. I looked this up in Strong's, and lady can also be translated as mistress in this. It's number 1404. So, and the Hebrew for lady in verse 5 is means mistress. All right, verse 6. I was angry with my people. I have profaned my inheritance and given them into your hand. You showed them no mercy. On the elderly, you laid your yoke very heavily. So they were merciless to the old people and the elderly that God sent into captivity in ancient Babylon for their 70 years of captivity. And so that can be a local application. I'm sure that can be attributed to what's going to happen in the future with Mystery Babylon as well, but we'll have to wait and see for that one. Verse 7, and you said, I shall be a lady forever, so that you did not take these things to heart, nor remember the latter end of them. Verse 8, therefore hear this now, you are given to pleasures, you who are given to pleasures, who dwell securely, who say in your heart, I am, and there is no one else besides me. I shall not sit as a widow, nor shall I know the loss of children. This is where it starts to get intriguing. So, this language here, so the harlot is saying, I shall not sit as a widow, nor shall I know the loss of children. So, there's an interesting conjecture that I'm going to give you. I'm not sold on it. but this is the first time I've ever heard it, and one of the commentators that I listen to, and it makes sense. So anyway, I'll go ahead and get into it. But if you read this, and she says, the harlot says, I shall not sit as a widow, nor shall I know the loss of children. If we go to Revelation 18, verse 4, and reread that, it says, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive her plagues, for her sins have reached to heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Render to her just as she rendered to you, and repay her double according to her works. In the cup which she has mixed, mix double for her, and the measure that she glorified herself and lived luxuriously, in the same measure give her torment and sorrow. For she says in her heart, I sit as queen, and am no widow, and will not see sorrow. Therefore her plagues will come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judges her. So we see here the same language about this Babylon, this harlot, and it says that in her heart she boasts, I am no widow and will not see sorrow. So basically, what we're reading here is a boast. It's a brag of this harlot saying that she's not going to see these things. But what do these things mean? What does being widowed and rendered childless, what does that mean? So, um, this is one way we can think about this, that it is a brag. And we see that the same thing in the book of Revelation um, has the same thing as Isaiah, verse 8 tells us. So when we read verse 9, it says, but these two things shall come to you in a moment, in one day, the loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon you in their fullness, because of the multitude of your sorceries, for the great abundance of your enchantments. Okay, so we know that it will be destroyed in one day, and chapter 18 of book of Revelation says the same exact thing as this verse says. So we're talking about the same Babylon here, obviously, as in the book of Revelation. Like I told you, the language speaks of a future and a local application. So that's what we're dealing with here. So, and he gives us detail in Isaiah and in Revelation about her destruction. That's what we're reading. So, Mystery Babylon in the book of Revelation is drunk with the blood of the martyrs and of the saints. And so clearly we know that this is the Roman Catholic Church. We also know that it is the city that sits on seven hills. We also know that that is Vatican City. Okay, so clearly then, but what if it's more than that? And this is the conjecture that the guy that I listened to presented, and it's not mine; it's his. But what if it's more than the Catholic Church? So what if her brag, this harlot's brag, is a post-rapture brag? So what if she's saying that she didn't lose any children in the rapture, and she wasn't widowed? She didn't lose anyone in this rapture. So if you think about it, all these New Age churches that are teaching false doctrine, that our little group keeps getting so much insight about, what if they're involved? So post-rapture, what if all these pastors that weren't true and teaching false doctrine, and obviously they're still going to be here, what if they gather all these denominations of churches together, combined with Catholicism, and this is the post-rapture church, which would be the harlot that rides the beast, the woman that rides the beast, and drunk with the blood of the martyrs and the saints. Okay, so we know that it's the Roman Catholic Church, but what if these other churches are involved too? So anyway, that's the conjecture. And then she would have bragging rights, saying that I was never widowed. My house was never desolate. I never had the bereavement of children. So anyway, it's a thought. Okay. So, let me catch up with my notes here. So, what I said, what if these denominations all combine? And we know that today we're seeing a lot more of this because we know that the Catholic Church is branching out and they are signing treaties with like Islam and the Protestants, and they're signing treaties all over the place trying to become one people and one denomination, and they want to be the world denomination, and that has always been for centuries. The Catholic Church has always tried to take over the world. They always have. That's always been their goal. It's always been their motive. Um, so it's no surprise that they're trying to make treaties and they're trying to make one world religion. They want to be the one world religion, reaching out and accepting other religions that worship false gods. You know, it, so that points to this. So it doesn't mean it's true. It's just saying that it's a conjecture and we should think about it. All right. So, so post rapture, if all these denominations become one church, you know, would explain a lot of things, and it would make sense. Um, so we know that Satan, he tries to mimic the Trinity. So uh, Satan wants to be God, and Antichrist, Jesus, and then false prophet, Holy Spirit. They try to mimic the Trinity. So if we're Christ's bride, the church, so what would the church of that Trinity be? The harlot, the Catholic Church, combined with this one world religion of all these denominations coming under Catholicism and calling themselves Christian. So um, it will be a fake Christianity. It will be a facade. Even if these New Age churches aren't involved, that's it. That's what it will be. It will be a facade, a fake Christianity. So, and that's what it will look like. All right. So it's just very interesting. I think it's interesting. Um, so I did look widow up. It can be translated as desolate house or place, and loss of children translated as bereavement. I think I said that earlier. So very interesting. All right, so verse 10. For you have trusted in your wickedness, you have said, no one sees me. Your wisdom and your knowledge have warped you, and you have said in your heart, I am, and there is no one else besides me. Therefore, evil shall come upon you. You shall not know from where it arises, and trouble shall fall upon you. You will not be able to put it off, and desolation shall come upon you suddenly, which you shall not know. Stand now with your enchantments in the multitude of your sorceries, in which you have labored from your youth. Perhaps you will be able to profit. Perhaps you will prevail. You are wearied in the multitude of your counsels. Let now the astrologers and the stargazers and the monthly prognosticators stand up and save you from what shall come upon you. So he's being sarcastic here. So Babylon was known for their sorceries and witchcraft and astrologers, obviously. So if you want to know what prognosticators are, if any of you have ever read your horoscope, that is prognosticators. The people that write those are monthly prognosticators, like it mentions here. So they're zodiac writers, basically. This all comes from ancient Babylon, sorceries and witchcraft, and I think we've, in another Bible study that I did, have went over that before, but it's interesting to find that they have traced the idolatries and the false worship in Roman Catholicism. They have traced that back to ancient Rome, which was Constantine. Then they traced it back to Pergamus, and then from Pergamus, they traced it back to ancient Babylon and the Tower of Babel. And that's where all false worship, all idol worship, sorceries, witchcraft, that's where all that began, was Babel. So it is the originator of all pagan worship. All right. So, oh, interesting. I looked up the word. Um, I think it was okay. In verse 13, he says, God says, "Let your stargazers, um, horoscope and astrologies, let them save you from what's to come." So I looked up um, an astrologer in the Strongs. And sorry, I got confused for a second. I couldn't remember which one I looked up. But astrologer is translated as horoscopist. That's what it's translated to in Strong's. And the Hebrew word for Chaldea or Chaldeans is means astrologer. So that's why I got confused on it because I knew they meant each other. But um, so anyway, I thought that was interesting. They were false worshippers from the start. So, all right. You are, verse 13, you are wearied in the multitude of your counsels, so now let the astrologers, the stargazers, and monthly prognosticators stand up and save you from what shall come upon you. So he's being sarcastic here. Let them save you with their monthly zodiac readings. All right, so, and I laugh about him being sarcastic about that, but a lot of people, a lot of Christians don't realize that's witchcraft. That's sorcery. They read their horoscope. They do all these stupid little quizzes on Facebook. What am I going to be in 10 years? The, just dumb. So that's witchcraft. That's sorcery. All right. Verse 14, behold, they shall be as stubble, or stubble is straw. The fire shall burn them. They shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame. It shall not be a coal to be it shall not be a coal to be warmed by, or an ember, nor a fire to sit before. Verse 15, thus shall they be to you with whom you have labored, your merchants from your youth. They shall wander each one to his quarter. No one shall save you. All right, so when it talks about the merchants here, uh, in the last few verses, quarter here is translated as opposite, side, region, or across the region. So we know that Mystery Babylon will be wealthy in trade and with its merchants. And these merchants and the kings of the earth that were fornicating with the harlot actually weep over Babylon whenever Mystery Babylon, when it's destroyed. They see the smoke from afar and they actually weep over it because they know that their tradings are done, their fornication's done, and it's all about the money. So anyway, it says that the merchants and the kings there stand at a distance because they are in fear of her torment. And so here, stand at a distance, which is opposite side or across the way, which could be translated as quarter. So we see that in Isaiah's translation, that it says, each one shall wander to his quarters. So they stand at a distance. So we see that fulfillment in both scriptures there. So that's chapter 18, 9, verse 9 through 18 in Revelation, if you're interested. Okay, so anyway, that sums up chapter 47. Interesting stuff there, stuff for us to think about and maybe pray about. But so anyway, that conjecture I gave you, I think that's a very good possibility. It could be true. It very well could be that, the harlot is just boasting that nobody's going to be able to lay siege against her, and she won't be widowed or lose any children in that way. Very well could be that too. But I thought I would throw it out there because it does make sense, especially with the way, that our world is today. So, anywho, I hope you have a blessed day, and I'll see you back for chapter 48.